Everyone in the Iron Moon Court believed Alara Vale was wolfless, until the Alpha King commanded her to shift before 1,000 witnesses, and the command struck her like a blade driven between her ribs. She stood alone beneath the black-antlered throne, barefoot on cold marble veined with silver, her torn Luna cloak dragging behind her, like the remains of a life she no longer owned. Above her, the banners of the 7 northern packs hung from the vaulted ceiling, each one marked with the sigil of a ruling bloodline, each one watching her humiliation like a silent judge. The nobles whispered behind jeweled masks. The council elders sat in a crescent of bone-carved chairs, their white wolf pelts draped over narrow shoulders. At the center of it all stood Alpha King Kael Draven, ruler of the northern kingdoms, conqueror of the Bloodfang Marches, the most feared wolf alive. His black cloak fell from his shoulders like a piece of the night itself, and his golden eyes held no softness when they rested on the woman who had once worn his mark. "Shift," he said, and the single word echoed through the court like thunder over a graveyard. Alara's throat tightened, but she lifted her chin. She had survived the rejection. She had survived the stripping of her title. She had survived being called barren, broken, cursed, and weak before the entire kingdom. But this command was different. This was not merely meant to shame her. This was meant to end her. Because if she failed to shift before the court, the council would brand her bloodless, revoke her name, and cast her into the howling pit, where wolfless traitors were left for the feral wolves beneath the castle. Beside the throne, Lady Seraphine smiled, with the delicate cruelty of a blade hidden in silk. She wore Alara's former silver circlet upon her golden hair, and the sight of it made something deep inside Alara's chest stir, something old and chained, something that had slept for 24 years beneath layers of pain and silence. The torches along the walls suddenly bent toward her, their flames turning white. A sound like distant war drums trembled beneath the marble. For the first time, Alpha King Kael's expression changed. Not fear, not yet. Recognition. Alara felt her bones begin to burn, and before the court could understand what was happening, the moonstone beneath her feet cracked open. 3 days earlier, Alara had still been Luna of the Iron Moon Kingdom, though the title had long felt like a crown made of thorns. She had been raised in the outer valleys of Housevale, a minor bloodline tolerated by the court only because her late father had once ridden beside the king's army. When Kael Draven first claimed her as his mate, the kingdom had been too shocked to speak. She was not the strongest she-wolf, nor the daughter of a ruling alpha, nor a court beauty trained to flatter powerful men. She was quiet, watchful, and strange in ways no one could name. Her wolf had never risen. No shift had come on her 16th moon, nor on the 7 moons after. The healers had pressed silver needles beneath her skin. The priestesses had burned moon herbs around her bed, and the elders had watched her with pity that tasted more like disgust. A girl without a wolf was one thing. A Luna without a wolf was an insult to the throne. Yet Kael had chosen her, not gently. Nothing about Kael Draven had ever been gentle. He had found her during the winter hunt, when a rogue wolf lunged from the pines toward a wounded child, and Alara stepped between them with nothing but a broken spear. She had not shifted. She had not roared. She had simply stood her ground with blood running down her arm and death in front of her. Kael had killed the rogue before it touched her, but when he turned, his wolf had gone still. The bond had struck like lightning. The court called it madness. Kael called it fate. For one brief season, Alara believed him. But fate, in a royal court, was never allowed to remain pure. From the first night she entered the black fortress of Verhold, the whispers followed her through the corridors. Wolfless Luna, hollow mate, a weakness on the throne. The council accepted her with bowed heads and sharpened hearts. The noble women smiled when Kael was present and left dead sparrows on her pillow when he was not. At feasts, they spoke of ancient queens who had led armies in wolf form, then lowered their eyes toward Alara's still hands. In the training yard, young warriors laughed when she walked past, and one even shifted behind her, snapping his jaws near her shoulder just to see if fear would make her wolf answer. It did not. Nothing answered. only the quiet ache inside her. The ache of a locked door she had spent her whole life pressing against from the wrong side. Cale saw some of it. She knew he did. Sometimes his gaze would linger on bruises she had hidden beneath her sleeves, and the air around him would darken until even Commander stepped back. But he never asked enough. He was always king before he was mate, always iron before warmth. He had inherited a kingdom surrounded by enemies, a council that feared weakness more than betrayal, and a throne that demanded blood before tenderness. Alara told herself this was why he grew distant. She told herself every ruler became colder beneath the weight of a crown. She told herself many things because the truth would have destroyed her too early. The betrayal began with a cup of moon wine at the Feast of Binding. Lady Seraphine arrived that evening like sunlight poured into human form, golden-haired, amber-eyed, and graceful enough to make the court fall silent. She was introduced as a distant noble from the western border, a daughter of House Marrow, though Alara felt something twist in her chest the moment their eyes met. Seraphine smiled, as if she knew a secret buried under Ilara's skin. By midnight, the court was drunk on music and prophecy. By dawn, a royal healer lay dead in the East Tower. Ilara's ceremonial dagger was found beside the body, and a vial of forbidden binding ash was discovered hidden in her chamber. The council accused her of witchcraft, murder, and falsifying the mate bond that tied her to the king. Alara denied it until her voice cracked, but every answer sounded small beneath the weight of arranged evidence. The dead healer had once examined her blood. The dagger bore her crest. The ash was the same substance used in ancient times to forge false bonds between rulers and ambitious brides. Worst of all, Seraphine stood before the court and wept with perfect elegance, claiming Alara had threatened her for discovering the truth. "She has no wolf," Seraphine whispered. "No true Luna would be so empty. She bewitched him. She bewitched our king." Kael did not speak at first. His silence was worse than any accusation. Ilara looked at him across the throne room, waiting for the man who had once pressed his brow to hers beneath falling snow, and told her that her quiet strength had called to his beast more fiercely than any battle cry. But the Alpha King's face was carved from stone. The council demanded a public rejection to sever the corrupted bond before it poisoned the throne. The nobles demanded punishment. The rival Alphas demanded proof that Iron Moon had not been ruled by a false Luna. Ilara heard the kingdom turning against her like a pack scenting blood. Still, when Kael stepped down from the throne, some ruined part of her hoped he would stand beside her. Instead, he stopped before her and removed the silver Luna circlet from her hair. His fingers did not tremble, but his jaw tightened so sharply she saw the muscle flicker. "Ilara Vale," he said, his voice low enough to break only her heart and still be heard by every soul in the hall. "Until your blood is judged clean, you are stripped of Luna title, Luna rights, and royal protection." Gasps rolled through the court like wind over dead leaves. Ilara stared at him, unable to breathe. He had not fully rejected the mate bond, not yet, but he had taken everything else. Seraphine lowered her eyes to hide a smile. Then Kael lifted his hand, and guards seized Ilara by both arms. As they dragged her away, the court bowed to the king who had chosen his throne over his mate, and Ilara learned that humiliation did not come as fire. It came as ice, spreading slowly through the places where love had been. Ilara was taken beneath the fortress to the old judgment cells, where the walls sweated with centuries of fear, and the only light came from moonstone bars that burned the skin of anyone with wolf blood. The irony did not escape her. The council called her wolfless, yet the bars blistered her palms when she touched them. She sat in the cold with her knees drawn to her chest and listened to distant footsteps crossing above, court life continuing over her head as if she had already become a ghost. She thought of Kael. She hated herself for thinking of him. She remembered the first time he had shown her the northern sky from the highest battlement, telling her that kings were not allowed to want simple things, and she had asked what simple thing he wanted most. He had looked at her so long the stars seemed to pause. "Peace," he had said. Then, almost too quietly, and someone who sees the beast without bowing to it. She had seen him. That was the cruelty of it. She had seen the man beneath the iron, but perhaps he had never seen her at all. On the second night, the dungeon door opened without warning. Ilara expected another council interrogator, another priestess with silver instruments, another guard sent to remind her she had fallen. Instead, Kyle entered alone. No crown, no cloak, only a dark tunic, sword at his hip, and shadows under his eyes deep enough to make him look more haunted than cruel. The guards at the far corridor withdrew at a single glance from him, and silence settled between king and prisoner. Ilara rose slowly. She had imagined this moment 100 ways. That she would curse him, strike him, beg him, turn away. But when he stood before the moonstone bars, all she could do was see the man who had taken her hand once after battle and cleaned blood from her fingers with a tenderness no one would have believed. "Did you kill Healer Orvin?" he asked. Ilara laughed, but it came out broken. "Is that truly what you came to ask?" His eyes darkened. "Answer me." "No." The word was simple, bare, all she had left. Kyle studied her face as if searching for a crack in it. "Did you use binding ash?" "No." "Did you know Lady Seraphine before the feast?" At that, something strange moved through Ilara's memory. A woman's voice singing over a cradle. 2 infants crying in the same chamber. One wrapped in white, one taken into darkness. She pressed a hand to her temple. "I do not know. I feel as if I should." Kale stepped closer, and the moonstone bars flared between them. His gaze dropped to her blistered palm. For one unguarded moment, anger flickered across his face, not at her but for her. "The bars burn you. Perhaps they are confused," she said softly. "Like everyone else." Kale's hand lifted as though he meant to touch the bars, then stopped. "The council will demand trial by shift." Ilara went still. "I cannot shift. I know." His voice roughened, and for a heartbeat the king's mask cracked. "I know." The admission wounded her more than denial would have. "Then why allow it?" she whispered. Kale looked away, and in that movement she saw the trap around him too. The council, the rival pacts, the accusations of witchcraft, the fragile throne held together by fear of his strength. "If I refuse the trial, they will declare the bond corrupted and move against you without royal law. If I allow it, I can keep the judgment in my court, beneath my command. So I am safer being publicly destroyed?" His eyes returned to hers, gold burning. "You are alive, because I made the court believe I doubted you." Ilara's breath caught. The words should have brought relief. Instead, they brought a sharper pain. "You stripped my title before them, to stop them from demanding your execution that night. You let Seraphine wear my circlet." His silence was a wound. "That was not my command." Ilara stared at him, and something cold in her chest shifted into something dangerous. "But you did not take it back." For the first time since entering, Kyle looked ashamed. Not openly. Kings did not know how to kneel to shame, but it passed through his expression like a shadow over fire. "There is more happening than you understand," he said. "Healer Orvin sent me a message before he died. He wrote only 3 words. The seal weakens." Ilara frowned. "What seal?" "I was hoping you knew." She shook her head, but the dungeon seemed to tilt around her. The phrase stirred something buried. "The seal weakens." Beneath her skin, a pulse answered. Not her heartbeat. Something deeper. The moonstone bars began to hum. Kale heard it too. His wolf rose behind his eyes, black and immense, and for the first time in her life, Ilara felt something inside her rise in response. It was not fear, it was recognition. The torches in the corridor bent toward her, flames paling from orange to white. Kale took a step back, not from weakness but from instinct, as if some ancient part of him had seen a battlefield open at her feet. "Ilara," he said carefully. "What are you feeling?" She wanted to answer, but a sound rolled through the dungeon before she could speak. A low, distant drumbeat, too rhythmic to be thunder, too deep to be footsteps. The walls trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere far above, wolves began to howl, one by one, until the entire fortress sounded as if it were mourning. Then, from the darkness beyond the corridor, a woman laughed softly. Kale turned, hand on his sword. Seraphine stepped from the shadows, wearing Alara's circlet beneath a veil of silver thread. "How touching," she said. "The king visits the traitor before her final humiliation." Kael moved before Alara could blink, placing himself between Seraphine and the cell with the effortless violence of a born predator. The air changed around him, heavy with the scent of storm and pine, and every torch in the corridor guttered beneath the force of his anger. Seraphine did not retreat. She merely tilted her head, her painted mouth curving. "Your Majesty, the council sent me to remind you that the prisoner is to have no private counsel before judgment. The council does not command me," Kael said. Seraphine's gaze flicked to Alara through the bars. "No, but fear does. Fear of appearing weak. Fear of admitting that your chosen Luna may have deceived you. Fear that your throne rests on a false bond." Alara felt the words strike where Seraphine intended them to strike, not only at Kael, but at the fragile space between them. Kael's voice lowered. "Leave." Seraphine's smile sharpened. "Gladly. But the elders have requested the trial be moved to the full court at moonrise tomorrow. Every alpha in attendance, every noble house, every witness. If she fails to shift, the law will be satisfied before all." She turned as if to go, then paused. "And if she somehow does shift, we shall finally see what kind of beast hides in a woman who has lied her whole life." Her eyes met Alara's again, and the strange pressure in Alara's skull returned. A memory flashed. Seraphine as a child, no older than 6, standing beside a cradle with blood on her little hands. Then it vanished. Seraphine walked away, her soft steps fading like poison poured into water. After she left, Kael remained still for several breaths. Alara watched the tension in his shoulders, the king warring with the wolf, the ruler with the man. "She is not what she claims to be," Alara said. Kael did not turn. "I know. Then why is she still breathing?" His jaw tightened. "Because she is protected by the council and by Lord Rovan of Ashvale. If I strike her without proof, the Western Pacts rebel before dawn. And if she destroys me with proof she forged..." Kael turned then, and the pain in his eyes startled her, because it was no longer hidden. "Then I will tear the court apart, stone by stone." The words should have frightened her. Instead, they made her grief tremble. "You say that now, in a dungeon where no one hears you." "I said less before the court, because every word would have tightened the noose around your throat." "Do you know what it felt like?" she asked, voice shaking despite all her efforts. "To stand there and wait for you to choose me. To believe, even after all of it, that you would look at me and know?" Kael closed his eyes briefly, as if the wound had found him. "Yes." Alara almost laughed. "No, you do not." "I felt the bond tear when I took your circlet," he said, and now his voice was raw enough to silence her. "I felt your heart break through mine. Do not tell me I did not know pain that night." The bond between them, damaged but not severed, stirred at his words. For one breath, she felt him, the sleeplessness, the rage, the helpless calculation of a king surrounded by knives, the memory of his own father, executed by council law for choosing love over strategy. Then the sensation vanished, leaving her shaken. Kael reached into his tunic and withdrew a small object wrapped in black cloth. He pushed it carefully through a narrow gap beneath the bars. Alara unfolded it to find a pendant of dark iron shaped like a crescent blade, her mother's pendant. She had not seen it since childhood. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "From Orvan's chamber, hidden behind a loose stone with his message." Ilara's fingers closed around it, and the metal warmed instantly against her skin. The dungeon torches flared white again. Kael watched with dangerous attention. "Do you remember your mother?" he asked. "Only fragments. A song, the scent of snow, a voice telling me not to answer when the wolf called." The pendant grew hotter. Alara gasped as an image tore through her mind. A woman with silver-streaked black hair kneeling in a circle of blood, pressing both hands over a child's chest while warriors battered a door beyond her. "Forgive me," the woman whispered. "Better sealed than slaughtered." Alara dropped the pendant, staggering back. Kael gripped the bars, and this time the moonstone burned his palms too. but he did not let go. "What did you see?" "My mother," Alara breathed. "She sealed something inside me." "Your wolf?" "No." The answer came from a place below thought. She looked up at him, terrified by her own certainty. Something with a wolf. The next hours unfolded like a blade being sharpened. Kale ordered the guards changed, sending away those loyal to the council and placing 2 of his personal black guard at the stair. He could not free her without igniting rebellion, but he could make her cell harder to reach. He brought old records from the sealed library, parchment brittle with age and ink faded to brown. Through the bars, they read by torchlight about the war-born queens, women of an extinct bloodline said to carry the spirit of Fenrya, the ancient goddess of battle and moonfire, whose white wolf could stand taller than kings, and whose howl could command armies. The council had erased most mention of them after the last war-born queen was accused of madness and executed. Alara traced the faded symbol beside the passage, a crescent blade over a white wolf's eye, the same mark as her mother's pendant. "This is impossible," she whispered. "The war-born line ended a century ago." Kale's expression was grim. "Or it was hidden. Why would my mother seal it?" "Because a child carrying that power would have been hunted by every throne in the realm." Alara looked at him. "Including yours?" He did not answer quickly enough. The silence settled between them, full of all the old laws and royal fears. Then he said, "Including mine." It was the honest answer, and because it was honest, it hurt less than a lie. Near dawn, Alara finally sank against the wall, exhausted by fear and memory. Kale remained seated outside the cell, one arm resting on his bent knee, his sword across his lap. "You should go," she murmured. "Kings should not sleep in dungeons." "I am not sleeping." "That makes it worse." A faint, bitter curve touched his mouth, the closest thing to a smile she had seen in days. "I have not slept well since the night you were taken from the Queen's chamber." Alara closed her eyes. "Do not call it that. It was never mine." "It was." His voice became quieter. "It still is." She did not let herself answer, but in the hush before morning, when the fortress above them lay between secrets and daylight, she felt something brush her spirit from the other side of the locked door inside her. A breath, a paw step, a great white presence pacing in chains. And for the first time, it spoke without words. "Not yet, little queen. Not yet." By moonrise, the entire kingdom seemed to gather inside the Court of Antlers to watch Alara be broken. The great hall had been cleansed with salt and wolf's blood, its marble floors polished until every torch reflected like a trapped flame. Nobles filled the upper galleries. Alphas stood in armored lines beneath their pack banners. The council elders sat closest to the throne, their faces solemn with the false sorrow of those who had already chosen the verdict. At the center of the hall, a circle had been carved into the marble and filled with powdered moonstone. Trial by shift was an ancient law, older than the Iron Moon throne itself. A true wolf could not refuse the command of its sovereign inside the circle. A false wolf would remain flesh and be judged unworthy of pack protection. Alara had seen the ritual only once before, when a traitor from a border pack was exposed and dragged screaming to the pits. Now the circle waited for her. They dressed her in gray, the color of the nameless dead. Her hair was unbound. Her wrists were clasped in thin chains of moon silver that stung but did not burn, as if the metal itself was uncertain what she was. When the guards led her into court, a wave of whispers rose and curled through the galleries. Wolfless, witch, false Luna, murderer. Alara heard each word and forced herself to keep walking. She would not crawl. Not for them, not for Seraphine, who stood beside the throne in a gown of pale gold, Alara's circlet gleaming on her brow. Not for the council, who watched her like vultures waiting for the last breath. And not for Kyle, who sat on the black throne with a crown of iron thorns resting against his dark hair, his face unreadable. Only his hands betrayed him. One gripped the arm of the throne hard enough that the carved bone cracked beneath his fingers. Lord Rovan, head of the royal council, rose first. He was an old alpha with silver hair, a narrow mouth, and eyes like spoiled ice. "Alara Vale," he declared, once named Luna by questionable bond, stands accused of false mating, forbidden witchcraft, murder of a royal healer, and blood deception before the throne. By ancient law, she has requested judgment beneath the sovereign command. Alara had requested nothing, and everyone knew it. But courts had a way of making cruelty sound lawful. Rovan turned toward Kale. "Your Majesty, command the accused." A hush fell so complete Alara could hear her own pulse. Kale descended from the throne, each step measured, each movement watched by hundreds hungry for weakness. He stopped at the edge of the circle. For a moment, the entire world narrowed to the space between them. Last night's words lived there. The pendant hidden beneath her gray dress warmed against her skin. Kael's gaze dropped briefly to it, then returned to her eyes. "Alara," he said, and though his voice carried through the hall, her name sounded almost like an apology. Shift. Nothing happened. The silence stretched. Somewhere in the gallery, someone laughed under their breath. Heat crawled up Alara's neck. She closed her eyes and reached inward, toward the locked door, the pacing presence, the ancient breath she had felt before dawn. Please, she thought. Not to Kale, not to the moon, but to whatever had waited inside her all these years. If you are real, do not leave me alone before them. The chains on her wrists trembled. A wind moved through the sealed hall. The powdered moonstone at her feet stirred, as though touched by invisible paws. The laughter stopped. Alara opened her eyes. Across the circle, Kale had gone utterly still. "Again," Rovan said sharply. Kale's eyes flashed. "I gave the command, then she has failed." Seraphine stepped forward, her voice sweet enough to rot. "Unless the false Luna needs encouragement." At her signal, 2 guards dragged a covered cage into the court. Alara's blood chilled before the cloth was removed. Beneath it crouched a white wolf cub with silver eyes, trembling, its small body marked by black iron burns. It was no common cub. Light pulsed faintly beneath its fur, and every wolf in the hall reacted at once, growls rising, nostrils flaring. A moon spirit. Rare. Sacred. Hunted nearly to extinction. Alara took an involuntary step toward it. The cub lifted its head and met her gaze. "Help me," its eyes seemed to say. Seraphine smiled. The accused was found harboring forbidden magic. Let us see whether mercy moves what royal command could not. She drew a narrow dagger and touched it to the cub's throat. Alara's body moved before thought. She lunged, but the chains snapped tight, held by the guards behind her. "Do not touch it," she said, and her voice was no longer soft. The court seemed to feel it. Even Kale turned sharply. Seraphine's smile widened. There she is. The dagger bit into the cub's fur. A single drop of luminous blood fell onto the marble. Alara screamed. It was not a human sound. The windows high above the court exploded inward, though no storm raged outside. Moonlight poured through the broken glass in silver spears. The powdered moonstone circle ignited beneath her feet, and every torch in the hall turned white. The guards holding her chains were thrown backward, as if struck by a warhorse. Alara fell to her knees, clutching her chest as pain ripped through her ribs. Not the pain of death, the pain of a door opening after being sealed for too long. The cub's cage shattered. It ran to her and pressed against her side. Above the chaos, Lord Rovan shouted for the blackguard. Seraphine stumbled back, her face pale with triumph and fear. Kyle stepped into the circle despite the burning moonstone, reaching for Alara. "Do not fight it," he commanded, but his voice shook. "Look at me." She tried. She truly tried. But behind her eyes, a battlefield rose. Snow soaked in blood, wolves with white war paint, a queen in armor, lifting a crescent blade beneath a red moon. Then the great presence inside Alara finally lifted its head, and the entire court heard the growl. The shift did not complete. That was the mercy and the horror of it. Alara's bones cracked once, her hands clawing against the marble as white light burst along her veins, but the seal around her power tightened like a noose before the wolf could fully emerge. She collapsed, gasping, half in this world, and half in another. The court erupted. Some nobles fled the galleries, others fell to their knees. Wolves snarled, not at her alone, but at the old instinct that told them something greater than an alpha had entered the hall. Kale reached her first. He tore the moon-silver chains from her wrists with his bare hands, ignoring the way they burned into his palms. Ilara clung to consciousness long enough to see Seraphine watching them, all sweetness gone from her face. In its place was hatred so intimate, it felt like blood calling to blood. "She is not Luna," Seraphine cried, turning to the council. "She is Warborn. She carries the forbidden goddess. You all know the law." The hall went cold. Even those who had not understood now understood enough. Warborn was not merely powerful. Warborn was outlawed. A queen of that line had once broken 3 kingdoms in a single night after her mate was murdered. Since then, the council's law had been simple. Any child carrying the war goddess spirit was to be sealed, imprisoned, or slain before awakening. Kale lifted Ilara in his arms, and the gesture sent a second shock through the court. "No one touches her." Lord Rovan rose, trembling with rage. "Your Majesty, if she is Warborn, she is no mate. She is a weapon of the old blood. The law demands immediate containment." "The law can bleed," Kale said. A collective gasp moved through the hall. Rovan's eyes narrowed. "Careful, my king. Your father also believed himself above council law." Kyle's wolf surged so violently the air darkened around him. "Speak of my father again, and your tongue will leave your mouth." The council elder fell silent, but the threat had landed where intended. Everyone knew King Eric Draven had died after challenging the council's authority. Officially, fever had taken him. Unofficially, he had been poisoned by those who feared a king who loved more than he obeyed. Ilara, barely conscious against Kale's chest, felt the old tragedy pulse through him like an unhealed wound. Then Seraphine played her final blade. "Ask her who her mother was," she said. Her voice rang clearly despite the chaos. "Ask her why the seal was placed. Ask her why she was hidden in Housevale while another daughter was raised in exile." Ilara's eyes opened. Another daughter. Kale's arms tightened around her. "What are you saying?" Seraphine stepped down from beside the throne, the stolen circlet gleaming like mockery. "I am saying the false Luna is not Ilara Vale. She is Ilara of Vera, firstborn daughter of Queen Merwin, last of the Warborn line. And her smile trembled with fury disguised as triumph. "I am her sister." The court broke into stunned whispers. Ilara stared at her, and the memory returned fully. 2 infants, one wrapped in white, one wrapped in red, a mother sobbing, warriors at the door, a servant fleeing with one child through snow, another child left in the arms of a council priestess. Seraphine's eyes glittered. "Mother chose you. She gave you the goddess and hid you away. I was given to the council like a bone tossed to dogs. Do you know what they taught me, sister? They taught me that power belongs to the one willing to take it." Before Kale could respond, Commander Varric, captain of the outer armies, drew his sword. Half the guards in the hall turned with him. Betrayal unfolded in the space of a breath. Men sworn to Kale stepped away from the throne and aligned themselves with Rovan and Seraphine. Rival Alpha Lord Ashran entered through the western doors with armed warriors, his red cloak dragging behind him. The trap had never been only for Ilara. It had been for the king. Expose the Warborn mate, force Kyle to defend her, declare him corrupted, and replace him with a council-controlled ruler. Kyle understood in the same moment Ilara did. "Seal the doors," Rovan ordered. "By authority of the council, Alpha King Kale Draven is judged, compromised by forbidden bond." The great doors slammed shut. The court became a cage. Kale set Ilara down gently behind him and drew his sword. The blade was black steel, named Nightfang, forged from the fang of the first Draven wolf. Its edge caught the white torchlight as if drinking it. "Any man who wishes to test that judgment," he said, "may step forward." For one heartbeat, no one moved. Then Varric attacked. The court exploded into violence. Kyle met the commander's blade with a force that shook sparks across the marble. The black guard, loyal to the king, clashed with the traitors. Wolves shifted in flashes of fur and fang, tearing through silk banners and overturning council chairs. Alara tried to rise, but her body trembled with the unfinished shift. The white cub pressed against her, its small form glowing brighter. "Run," she whispered to it, though she knew there was nowhere to run. Across the chaos, Seraphine lifted both hands and began to chant in the old tongue. The stolen circlet on her brow turned black. Alara felt the seal inside her tighten again, not from within but from Seraphine's magic. Pain crushed her chest. Her sister had not merely exposed her. She knew how to control the chains. Kale saw Alara fall and lost all restraint. His shift came like night swallowing fire. One moment he was a king with a sword. The next, a massive black wolf landed where he had stood, larger than any alpha in the hall, eyes molten gold, jaws closing around a traitor's blade and snapping it in two. The court screamed. His wolf drove through the attackers toward Alara, but Lord Ashran shifted too, a red-brown beast scarred across one eye, and slammed into him before he could reach her. The two alphas collided with enough force to crack the marble. Alara crawled toward Kael as Seraphine's chant grew louder. "You should have stayed buried," Seraphine hissed across the battlefield. "You should have remained the weak little Luna everyone pitied. But now, they will see you as the monster you are." Ilara's vision blurred. The white cub licked blood from her wrist, and where its tongue touched, silver light spread through her veins. A voice rose inside her again, deeper than memory, older than fear. Not monster, queen. Alara did not stand because she was unafraid. She stood because fear had taken enough from her. It had taken her childhood memories, her mother's name, her wolf, her title, her dignity, and nearly the man whose love had been buried beneath a crown of iron duties. Around her, the court tore itself apart. Kael and Ashran battled beneath the throne, black wolf against scarred wolf, their snarls shaking dust from the vaulted ceiling. Seraphine's magic pressed harder, invisible chains winding through Alara's bones. The council shouted for moon-silver nets. Archers appeared in the gallery with arrows tipped in white iron. Every eye turned toward her again, not with mockery now, but with terror. Perhaps that should have satisfied her. It did not. Terror was only another cage. Alara reached beneath her dress and tore the crescent pendant from its chain. The moment it touched open air, the entire hall dimmed. Even the fighting faltered. Seraphine's chant broke for half a breath. "No," she whispered. Alara looked at the symbol in her palm, the crescent blade over the white wolf's eye. Her mother had not left her a trinket. She had left her a key. The pendant opened beneath her touch, revealing a sliver of bone etched with blood runes. Memory surged through Alara, not as fragments this time, but as inheritance. Queen Merwin kneeling over her infant daughter, the council battering the doors, Seraphine crying from another woman's arms, healer Orvin, younger then, begging the queen to flee. "The goddess will consume her if she awakens too soon," Merwin said, tears falling onto the child's brow. "Seal her until love calls the wolf and war demands the queen." Love and war. Alara looked toward Kael. He was bleeding from a wound across his shoulder, but he placed himself between Ashran and her, even in wolf form, even outnumbered, even when every law told him she was the danger. Love had called. War had answered. Seraphine lunged first. Magic spilled from her hands in black ribbons, striking Alara across the chest. The pain was immense, but this time Alara did not fold. She pressed the bone key against her heart. "I am done being sealed." The words were quiet. They should not have carried. Yet every creature in the court heard them. The key burned into her skin and vanished. For one breath, nothing happened. Then the seal shattered. The transformation began with light, not gentle moonlight, but a blinding white radiance that erupted from beneath Alara's skin and burst upward in the shape of spectral wings before collapsing into fur, fang, and fire. Her body arched as the ancient wolf inside her finally rose to its full height. The gray dress tore away in streams of ash. Her chains melted. The marble circle exploded outward. sending council elders sprawling from their chairs. A howl ripped from her throat, half woman, half goddess, and every wolf in the hall dropped to its belly. Even Kale's black wolf staggered, not in submission forced by fear, but in recognition of something older than kingship. Ilara shifted. Where the broken Luna had stood, a giant white wolf emerged, taller than Kale's black wolf, her fur blazing like snow beneath a full moon, her eyes silver blue and ancient. Crescent markings burned along her shoulders like war paint. Around her neck glimmered a phantom collar of pale fire shaped like a queen's torque. The court fell into absolute silence. The thumbnail moment had come alive in flesh and terror. The rejected Luna transformed before the royal court, her white wolf towering over the Alpha King's black wolf, while nobles trembled beneath shattered banners. Seraphine stumbled backward, face stripped of triumph. No, she breathed again, but this time it was not denial. It was fear. Ilara's senses opened wider than the world. She smelled lies like rot beneath perfume. She smelled the council's fear, Ashran's ambition, Varric's sweat, Seraphine's blood that matched her own and still curdled with envy. She smelled Kale too, storm, iron, pine, blood, and beneath it all, the bond they had tried to bury, damaged but unbroken, burning gold through the dark. Ashran, foolish with pride, tore away from Kale and leaped toward her. Ilara turned her head. That was all. The ancient war spirit inside her growled, and the sound struck Ashran midair. His body slammed into the floor and skidded across the marble, claws scraping helplessly. The court cried out. Kyle shifted back into human form, kneeling from exhaustion and blood loss, staring at her with awe so raw it pierced through the goddess haze. Not fear. Awe, grief, love. Seraphine recovered before the others. She snatched a moon-silver spear from a fallen guard and drove it toward Kale's exposed back. Ilara moved faster than thought. She crossed the hall in a blur of white fire, jaws closing around the spear before it struck. The silver burned her mouth, but she snapped the weapon and hurled the pieces aside. Seraphine stared up at the giant wolf, trembling now. "You had everything," she spat. "Even sealed, even weak, you were chosen. By Mother, by him, by the goddess. What was left for me?" Ilara's wolf lowered her head until one silver eye filled Seraphine's world. Through the bond of blood, Ilara pushed words without speaking. "You chose the council. You chose the knife." Seraphine's face crumpled, but hatred returned to hold it together. "Then be a queen of ashes." She slashed her palm across the stolen circlet and triggered the spell hidden within it. Black fire erupted from the circlet, spreading across the court ceiling in veins of shadow. The ancient antler beams groaned. Moonstone pillars cracked. The spell was not meant to defeat Ilara. It was meant to collapse the entire court and bury every witness, leaving Seraphine and the council's chosen survivors to reshape the tale. Kyle saw it too. "Ilara!" he shouted. The ceiling began to fall. The first pillar collapsed over the eastern gallery, and the court became a storm of screams, dust, and falling stone. Ilara's wolf instincts pulled in a dozen directions at once. Kill the traitors, save the cub, shield Kyle, stop Seraphine, hold the roof, protect the innocent who had mocked her, but did not deserve to die beneath council treachery. The war goddess inside her urged blood. The queen in her demanded more. She planted her paws in the cracked marble and lifted her head toward the spreading black fire. Power surged from her howl, not as destruction but command. The falling stones slowed. The shattered moonlight gathered around her, weaving into great silver threads that stretched from pillar to pillar. Gasps rose as the court realized the monster they had feared was holding the ceiling above them. Kyle staggered to his feet and seized Nightfang from the floor. Blood darkened his tunic, but his gaze was clear. "Blackguard," he roared. "Evacuate the galleries. Protect the unarmed. Traitors answer to me." His authority returned like a battle horn. Loyal warriors rallied. Those who had hesitated now chose sides. Some council guards threw down their weapons and dragged nobles from the collapsing hall. Others fled. Varric tried to reach the western door, But Kale intercepted him. Their blades met again, this time without ceremony. "I raised you from a starving border pup," Kale said, voice low with lethal grief. "I trusted you with my armies," Varric snarled. "You trusted a wolfless queen with your throne." Kale's sword drove through the commander's guard and stopped at his throat. "No," he said. "I failed to trust her enough." Then he struck the commander down. Alara held the collapsing roof with threads of moonfire, but the effort burned through her like a second transformation. Seraphine moved beneath the chaos, trying to reach the side passage where Lord Rovan and two elders were escaping with a black-bound book clutched to his chest. The book pulsed with the same dark magic as the circlet. Ilara knew, without knowing how, that it contained the rites used to seal war-born children, to bind wolves, to forge false evidence, perhaps even to poison kings. She released one thread of moonfire and leaped, landing before Rovan with enough force to split the marble between his feet. The old alpha froze. The book slipped from his hands. He tried to speak law at her. "By ancient decree," Ilara's growl silenced him. Law had been his mask. Fear had been his god. Behind her, Kale approached, sword red, eyes colder than winter. "Lord Rovan," he said, "by authority of the crown you attempted to steal, you are stripped of council rank and pack protection." Rovan's face went slack. It was the punishment he had designed for Ilara, returned with perfect cruelty. "You cannot," the elder whispered. Kale's expression did not change. "Watch me." But Seraphine was not finished. She reached the white cub, which had been hiding beneath a broken chair, and seized it by the scruff. The cub cried out, and Ilara's power faltered. A crack split the ceiling. Seraphine backed toward the dais, holding a shard of moon silver to the cub's throat. Dust streaked her perfect face. The stolen circlet, now blackened and cracked, sat crooked on her brow. "Stay back," she screamed. "All of you." Ilara turned slowly. Kale lifted his sword but did not move. Seraphine's eyes fixed on her sister's giant wolf form, madness and pain twisting together. "Do you know what they told me?" she demanded. "They told me Mother begged them to spare you. You, the dangerous one. You, the cursed one. She gave me away because I was ordinary." Her voice broke on the word. For the first time, Ilara saw not only the enemy, but the child left behind, shaped by wolves who fed her bitterness until it became purpose. It did not excuse the blood, but it made the wound visible. Ilara let the white fire around her dim. Slowly, painfully, she shifted back. The court watched in stunned silence as the giant wolf folded into light, and Ilara emerged human again, kneeling amid torn gray cloth and moonlit ash. Her hair had turned silver white at the ends. Crescent marks glowed faintly along her collarbone. She stood with no crown, no cloak, no armor, yet every gaze lowered when she rose. Kale moved as if to cover her with his cloak, but she lifted a hand, stopping him without looking away from Seraphine. "You were not ordinary," Ilara said, her voice carrying through the broken court. "You were my sister." Seraphine flinched. "Do not say that as if it means something now." "It should have." Ilara stepped closer. "They made you believe love was a throne with only one seat. They lied." Tears brightened Seraphine's eyes, but her grip tightened on the cub. "Then kneel," she whispered. "Kneel to me, and I will let it live." Kale's growl filled the air, but Ilara looked at the cub, then at the cracking ceiling, then at the sister who had mistaken surrender for justice. Slowly, Ilara bent one knee. The entire court inhaled. Kyle took a step forward, anguish flashing across his face. "Ilara, no." But she lowered herself before Seraphine, not as the humiliated Luna from before, not as a prisoner, but as a queen choosing life over pride. "Let the cub go," she said. Seraphine's face twisted. She had wanted triumph, but this did not taste like triumph. It tasted like being seen. Her hand trembled. For one fragile second, she might have released the cub. Then Lord Rovan, crawling behind a broken pillar, shouted, "Foolish girl, kill them both." The spellbook at his feet flared. Seraphine startled. The moon's silver shard slipped, cutting the cub. Its luminous blood fell onto Alara's kneeling hand. The war goddess woke in full. Alara did not howl this time. She rose. The cub's blood sank into her palm, and the moonfire inside her turned from white to silver blue, ancient and merciless. Every lie in the room became visible. Threads of dark magic stretched from Roven's spellbook to Seraphine's circlet, from the circlet to the forged evidence, from the evidence to the dead healer's chamber, from there to Varric's hand, Ashran's oath, the council's hidden seals. The truth unfolded above the court in a vast spectral vision, projected in moonlight for every witness to see. Healer Orvan alive, discovering Alara's bloodline. Seraphine entering his chamber with Varric. Roven ordering the murder. The dagger planted. The binding ash hidden. Kael's private letters intercepted. Seraphine practicing tears before a silver mirror. The court watched its own corruption bloom across the air. No council speech could bury it now. Kael's face went white with fury. Not the wild fury of a wolf, but the colder rage of a king who had been maneuvered into wounding the one person he should have protected. The nobles who had mocked Alara began to kneel, one by one. Some out of fear, some out of shame. The rival alphas lowered their heads as the vision showed Ashran signing a blood pact to divide Iron Moon lands after Kael's removal. The Black Guard seized him where he lay. Roven tried to deny it, but his voice cracked beneath the weight of visible truth. Alara turned to him. "You used law to murder children." He shook his head, crawling backward. "We preserved the realm. You preserved your power." The moonfire wrapped around him, not burning flesh but stripping every protective oath from his blood. His alpha aura vanished. The old man gasped, as if something had been torn out of him. Around the court, wolves recoiled. To lose pack power was worse than death to men like Rovan. Alara had not killed him. She had made him ordinary. Then she faced Seraphine. Her sister still held the cub, but her hand had gone limp. Tears carved clean paths through dust on her cheeks as the moonlit visions exposed even the memories she had hidden from herself. A small girl in council chambers being told her mother never loved her. A young woman beaten until she mastered binding magic. A promise whispered by Roven that if she destroyed Alara, she would be queen. Seraphine looked at the old counselor with dawning horror. "You said she stole my life." Roven spat blood onto the marble. "She did." Alara stepped closer. "No, he did." Seraphine's breath shook. The cub slipped from her arms and ran to Alara. For one heartbeat, sister faced sister across the ruins of everything stolen from them. Seraphine lifted a trembling hand toward the cracked circlet. "I do not know who I am without hating you," she whispered. Alara's expression softened with pain. "Then live long enough to find out." But Seraphine looked past her, where Kael stood, sword ready, justice waiting. She smiled sadly. "Queens may forgive, courts do not." Before anyone could stop her, Seraphine tore the blackened circlet from her brow and crushed it in both hands. The backlash threw her backward into the collapsing dais. Black fire burst upward, no longer controlled by the circlet's form. It became a vortex that dragged loose stone, broken weapons, banners, and bodies toward its center. Seraphine vanished behind a wall of shadow. Alara reached for her, but the force hurled her back. Kael caught her before she struck the floor, his arms closing around her with desperate strength. For the first time since the rejection, there was no court between them, no counsel, no strategy, no crown. Only his body shielding hers from the storm, and his voice at her ear. "I have you." The words broke something in her, not the seal, not the wolf, but the last frozen piece of her heart. "You let me fall before," she whispered. His eyes closed as if she had struck him. "I know. Why should I trust you now?" He opened his eyes, and in them she saw no defense. "Because I will spend every breath proving I should have trusted you first." The vortex roared louder. The ceiling finally gave way. Alara felt her wolf surge, but she was too drained to hold the entire hall again. Kael sensed it. He looked toward the throne. then toward the people still trapped beneath falling stone. Nobles who had mocked her, guards who had chained her, servants too frightened to move, young wolves crying beneath broken benches. "Can you command them?" he asked. "Not alone." He nodded once, as if the answer had always been waiting. Then, Alpha King Kael Draven, ruler of the northern kingdoms, knelt before the woman he had publicly humiliated. Not because she forced him, not because her wolf towered over his, because the court needed to see him choose. He bowed his head before Alara, his sword laid flat at her feet. "Then not alone," he said. "My wolf, my crown, my kingdom, all of it stands with you." The hall froze around that image, the king kneeling before the rejected Luna. The power dynamic reversed beyond repair. Alara looked at him, and the mate, bond, wounded but living, flared between them like sunrise over a battlefield. She placed her hand on his bowed head. "Rise with me," she said. Kael rose. Together they turned toward the vortex. Black Wolf and White Queen, Iron Crown and Moonfire Blood. Their powers met, not as ruler and possession, but as equals. Kael's alpha command thundered through every wolf in the hall, ordering them to flee, protect, survive. Ilara's moonfire wove above them, sealing the cracks, lifting fallen beams, opening paths through rubble. The court obeyed, not because it feared her, because, at last, it recognized her. The battle moved from court to courtyard, as the survivors fled beneath a sky split open by storm clouds and a full moon burning unnaturally bright. Verhold's black towers loomed over the chaos, their windows blazing with reflected silver fire. The council's remaining loyalists tried to rally at the outer gate, where Lord Ashran's warriors had seized the drawbridge and prepared to open the fortress to rebel forces waiting in the valley. If they succeeded, the kingdom would wake to civil war by dawn. Kael, wounded but unbowed, mounted the steps above the courtyard and let his alpha voice roll across the fortress. "Iron Moon, to me." Wolves answered from every direction. Black Guard, kitchen boys with knives, stable hands, noble sons who had chosen too late, but still chose. Even some of the rival pack warriors, seeing the truth exposed, turned against Ashran's command. Yet the rebel force beyond the gate was vast, and Alara could feel the spellbook's shadow still pulsing somewhere beneath the ruins. Roven had not created the black fire alone. Something older had been bound into those pages, something that fed on sealed wolves and stolen power. A scream rose from the broken court behind them. Seraphine emerged from the shadow vortex, but she was no longer entirely herself. Black fire wrapped her body like a second skin. The crushed circlet had driven the spell into her blood, and the thing behind the council's magic now wore her pain as a doorway. Her eyes were black from edge to edge. "Warborn," she said, though the voice was deeper than Seraphine's. At last, Alara stepped forward, but Kael caught her wrist. "That is not only your sister." "I know. Can you save her?" Alara watched the black fire twist through Seraphine's veins. Beneath it, her sister's face flickered, terrified and trapped. "I do not know." Kael's hand tightened once, then released. "Then I will hold the gate." It was not abandonment. It was trust. He turned away from the impossible battle he wanted to fight for her, and chose the one only he could win. That choice steadied her more than any vow. Kael shifted mid-stride, his black wolf landing at the head of the defenders as Ashran's rebels broke through the outer gate. The clash shook the courtyard. Alara faced Seraphine beneath the moon. The white cub stood beside her, no longer trembling, its small silver eyes fixed on the darkness wearing her sister. "You were sealed to prevent us from returning," the shadow said through Seraphine's mouth. "War queens broke kingdoms. Councils merely learned from them." Alara understood then. The council had not only feared warborn women, it had used fragments of their sealed power for generations, binding wolves, controlling bloodlines, shaping thrones. Seraphine had been both weapon and victim, raised on stolen rights that now consumed her. "Release her," Alara said. The shadow laughed. "She invited me." Every wound is a door. It lifted Seraphine's hand, and black spears burst from the ground around Ilara. She shifted as they struck, White Wolf twisting through them with impossible grace. One grazed her side, burning cold. She lunged, but the shadow split into ravens of smoke and reformed behind her. Again and again, it used Seraphine's body as shield and blade, forcing Ilara to hold back while the battle at the gate worsened. Kael's Black Wolf fought like a living storm, but he was injured, and Ashran, desperate, targeted the wound in his shoulder. Ilara felt Kael's pain through the bond and nearly turned. The shadow struck that instant, driving black fire into her chest. She fell, half-shifted, the world blurring. "There," it whispered. "Love makes even goddesses kneel." In the distance, Kael howled her name through the bond, a sound so fierce it tore through the battlefield. Ilara's vision filled with memories. Kael taking her circlet, Kael kneeling, her mother sealing her, Seraphine crying in council chambers, the court laughing, the cub bleeding, the White Wolf waiting in chains. Love had made her kneel, but not in weakness. She had knelt to save. She had knelt and risen. She understood the goddess then. War was not rage. War was the refusal to let cruelty decide who lived. Ilara stopped fighting the spirit inside her and opened to it fully. The White Wolf rose around her, not consuming the woman but joining her. Fur, light, blood, memory, queen, goddess, all one. She stood taller than before, luminous beneath the moon, and when she howled, every sealed thing in the kingdom heard her. Chains cracked in hidden cells. Old oaths broke. Wolves who had been bound by council magic felt their spirits return. Even Seraphine screamed as the shadow inside her recoiled. Ilara lunged, not at her sister's throat but into her. Moonfire passed through flesh and seized the darkness beneath. The shadow fought, showing her visions of war-born queens burning cities, kings betraying mates, sisters murdering sisters, love ending in graves. Ilara answered with truth, Kael standing between her and the court, her mother choosing mercy through sacrifice, the cub trusting her bloodied hands, Seraphine lowering the shard when offered compassion. Not enough to erase pain. Enough to prove pain was not the only inheritance. With a final cry, Ilara tore the shadow from Seraphine's body. It emerged as a mass of black flame shaped like a wolf skull, shrieking beneath the moon. Kael, sensing the opening, broke from the gate battle and raced toward her despite Ashran's claws tearing at his flank. "Now," Ilara shouted through the bond. Kael leaped, shifting back midair with Nightfang in his hand, and drove the black blade through the shadow's skull as Ilara's moonfire closed around it. Iron and moon, Alpha and Warborn. The creature shattered into sparks that fell like dead stars across the courtyard. Seraphine collapsed. Ilara caught her before she struck the stone. For a moment, her sister was only a woman, pale and shaking, all her stolen grandeur burned away. "I wanted them to look at me the way they looked at you," Seraphine whispered. Ilara held her, grief twisting through victory. "They never truly saw either of us." Seraphine's eyes flickered toward Kael, then back. "Do not let them make you a weapon," her breath hitched. "Do not let him make you small again." Ilara looked at Kael. He heard. His face tightened, but he did not protest. Seraphine smiled faintly, as if that silence pleased her. Then her eyes closed. She did not die, but the darkness had taken much, and whether she would wake as enemy, sister, or stranger, no one could know. At the gate, Ashran saw the shadow fall and lost courage. He tried to flee through the broken drawbridge, but Kael intercepted him in human form, bloody and terrible. Their final duel was brief. Ashran fought with ambition. Kael fought with a kingdom behind him and a mate beside him. Nightfang struck the rival Alpha's sword from his hand. Kael did not kill him. He forced him to his knees before the assembled packs, then looked to Ilara. It was another choice, public and deliberate. He would not decide her justice without her. Ilara, exhausted, silver-eyed, and still glowing faintly with the war goddess's power, stepped to the front of the courtyard. The same nobles who had watched her humiliation now watched her judgment. "Let him live," she said. Murmurs rose. Ashrin looked up in disbelief. Hilara's voice hardened. Let him live without title, without army, without the right to challenge any throne. Let every pack remember that I do not need death to prove power. Kael bowed his head. So it shall be. And with those words, the old order ended. Dawn came slowly over Verhold, pale and red at the edges, touching the broken towers as if the fortress itself had survived a judgment. The Court of Antlers lay in ruins, its throne cracked, its banners torn, its moonstone floor split where Alara's wolf had awakened. Yet the people did not gather there now. They gathered in the open courtyard beneath the morning sky. Warriors, servants, nobles, alphas, omegas, children, healers, guards who had chosen wrong, and those who had chosen bravely. The council seats had been dragged from the hall and burned. Lord Rovan knelt in chains, stripped of rank and wolf power, waiting to be sent to the silent monastery beyond the Frost River, where men who abused law would spend their remaining years recording the truths they had tried to erase. Commander Varric's traitors had been disarmed. Ashrin's forces had surrendered. Seraphine slept under guard in the healing tower, neither forgiven nor condemned. Her fate held until she woke and could answer as herself. Nothing was simple. That was how Alara knew it was real. Kael stood before the kingdom without his crown. The iron circlet lay broken on the stone steps between him and Alara. He had refused the healers until she allowed her wounds to be bound first, and now he looked more mortal than she had ever seen him, bruised, blood-stained, sleepless, and stripped of every illusion that power alone could protect what mattered. When the gathered packs fell silent, he turned not to them first, but to her. The gesture made whispers ripple outward. Alara stood in a cloak of white wool someone had placed over her shoulders, the moon cub nestled at her feet. Her hair, once dark, now carried streaks of silver that caught the dawn. She was no longer the woman they had dragged into court, but she was not only the goddess wolf either. She was Alara, and for the first time, that name felt large enough. Kael lowered himself to one knee before her again, this time not amid chaos, not as strategy, before the entire kingdom. Alara of Vera, he said, voice carrying across the courtyard. Last daughter of the Warborn line, true Luna of Iron Moon, and the mate I failed before all witnesses. I stripped your title when I should have stripped the court of its lies. I doubted your innocence in public, though my soul knew it in silence. I chose the shape of duty over the heart of it. No crown can excuse that. His throat moved, and the court seemed to hold its breath with him. I do not ask you to forget. I do not ask you to return because fate commands it. I ask only for the right to spend my life restoring what I broke, whether you stand beside me as queen, apart from me as sovereign of your own bloodline, or beyond my reach forever. The words struck Alara more deeply than any grand vow could have, because there was no possession in them, only surrender. For a long moment, she said nothing. The old court would have demanded an answer for spectacle. The new morning waited. Ilara looked at the man kneeling before her and saw all of him, the king shaped by a murdered father, the wolf taught that love could be used as a blade against the throne, the mate who had wounded her, the warrior who had bled for her, the ruler willing to kneel before those who expected him to dominate. Forgiveness did not arrive like sunlight. It came cautiously, like a wounded animal approaching an open hand. When you took my circlet, she said softly, I thought the bond had chosen cruelly. Pain flickered across his face, but he did not look away. Perhaps it chose two broken things and waited to see whether they would become weapons or shelter. Kael bowed his head lower. And what have you chosen? Ilara stepped closer. The white cub rose. The packs leaned in without meaning to. She touched Kael's jaw, lifting his face to hers. I choose not to be hidden again. Not by your fear, not by council law, not by love that asks me to become smaller so a throne can feel safe. His eyes burned gold. Never again. I choose to remain Luna, only if Luna means queen, equal, and judge of my own power. Then the law will be remade. Not by you alone. A faint, aching smile touched his mouth. No, not by me alone. Alara looked to the gathered kingdom. Hear me, she said. and her voice carried not by force, but by the strange stillness that followed truth. I was called wolfless, because men who feared my blood sealed my wolf. I was called false because liars controlled the proof. I was called weak because I survived quietly. Let this kingdom remember. Silence is not emptiness. Mercy is not surrender, and a woman brought to her knees may yet rise taller than every throne built over her. The courtyard bowed. Not all with love, some with fear, some with awe, some with shame. It was enough for the first dawn. The old laws were broken over the next 7 days. The howling pit was sealed and blessed, its prisoners brought into light and judged anew. The archives were opened, revealing generations of stolen bloodlines and sealed children. The council was dissolved, to be rebuilt with representatives from packs high and low, wolfed and wolfless, noble and common-born. The war-born line was no longer named forbidden, though Ilara herself insisted on safeguards, not cages, for power like hers. Seraphine woke on the 5th day. She did not ask forgiveness. Ilara did not offer it too quickly. They sat together in the healing tower while snow fell beyond the window, two sisters divided by a lifetime of lies. Seraphine's voice was hoarse when she finally spoke. "Did Mother love me?" Ilara answered with the only truth she had. "I think she loved us both, and was given no world in which to save us together." Seraphine wept then, not beautifully, not like a court lady, but like a child, whose wound had finally found air. What would become of her remained uncertain. Some stories did not heal by the final page. Some only began there. On the night of the next full moon, Ilara returned to the Court of Antlers alone. The hall had been cleared of rubble, but the throne remained cracked. Moonlight streamed through the broken windows, silvering the scars in the marble. She stood where she had been commanded to shift, where humiliation had become awakening, and listened to the quiet. Kyle found her there, though he stopped at the doorway and waited for permission before entering. That, more than any apology, told her he was learning. "You may come in," she said. He crossed the hall slowly. For once, he wore no sword. "The packs are calling it the White Moon Judgment," he said. "They would. The storytellers have already made me more foolish than I was." Ilara glanced at him. "Impossible." A surprised breath left him, almost a laugh, and the sound loosened something between them. Not healed, loosened. He stood beside her in the moonlight. "I should have known you were stronger than the court's fear." "Yes," he accepted it. "I should have trusted the bond." "No," she said, turning to him. "You should have trusted me." KL's expression changed, grief and understanding settling into place. "Yes." The answer was simple, but it mattered. Ilara looked down at the cracked circle beneath their feet. "My wolf is still angry with you." "Only your wolf?" "No." His mouth curved faintly, then faded. "I can bear that." She studied him for a long moment. "Can you bear a queen who may one day disagree with you before the entire court?" "I would welcome a court honest enough to survive it." "Can you bear a mate who does not return to your chamber simply because the moon says she belongs there?" His eyes darkened, but not with anger. "With longing disciplined by respect. I can wait at any door you ask me to wait outside." The bond between them warmed, no longer a chain, but a thread held carefully in two hands. Ilara stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat of him, the restrained power, the sorrow, the devotion beginning to take a humbler shape. "I loved you before I knew how much it could hurt," she whispered. Kale closed his eyes. "I loved you before I knew how to protect anything without trying to control it. And now?" He opened his eyes. "Now I would rather lose the throne than make a prison of your love." The words moved through her like moonlight over water. She did not forgive everything in that instant. She did not need to. Love worthy of survival did not demand that wounds vanish. It asked whether two souls would tend them honestly. Ilara lifted her hand and placed it over his heart. His breath caught. Beneath her palm, his pulse beat hard and steady. The mate bond answered, gold and silver weaving through the quiet hall. Then, slowly, Kale covered her hand with his, not holding her there, only meeting her touch. Beyond the broken windows, wolves began to howl across the northern mountains. One pack, then another, until the sound rolled over Verhold like a vow remade. Ilara felt her white wolf rise within her, vast and calm, no longer chained behind a sealed door. Kael's black wolf answered, not above hers, not before hers, but beside it. In the moonlit ruins of the court that had tried to destroy her, the rejected Luna stood face to face with the Alpha King who had knelt, and the future opened before them, dangerous, unfinished, and alive. When he leaned toward her, he stopped just short of a kiss, letting the choice rest with her. Ilara looked at the cracked throne, the shattered circle, the dawn waiting beyond night, and then back at the man who had finally learned that a queen was not claimed by command. She rose onto her toes and kissed him, not as surrender, not as proof, but as a beginning. The moonlight flared once around them, white and gold together, and somewhere deep in the ancient bones of the kingdom, the war goddess smiled.